founded in December 1904 by George Ellery Hale as one of the original scientific enterprises of the Carnegie Institution of Washington, Mount Wilson Observatory has completed its first century as one of the world's premier astronomical observatories. During the first half of the 20th century, Mount Wilson was successfully home to the world's two largest telescopes, as well as the most powerful facilities in existence for studying the sun. The 60-inch and 100-inch nighttime telescopes and the 60-foot and 150-foot solar tower telescopes revolutionized the study of astronomy.
It has stood the test of time. God's book, the Bible, still relevant in today's complex world. It is written, founded by George Vandeman, sharing messages of hope around the world. Today, Bill Santos presents Silent Messengers.
We are living in the midst of a brilliantly lighted, swiftly moving, life-filled universe comprised of billions of blazing suns and trillions of wonder worlds. Look up and see the silver moon in queenly majesty and the fleets of stars in glittering splendor as they go sailing through the silent night. One night, Napoleon was sailing the blue Mediterranean under a starry sky. He paced the deck restlessly, listening to his infidel officers as they argued against religion and God. Turning suddenly, he interrupted their godless conversation with these significant words: "That's all very well, gentlemen, but pray tell me then, who made those stars?" When your perspective becomes distorted and you are burdened with problems and worries, take time to get out of the large city and look up into the night. Stargazing is medicinal for the soul. Our petty cares and excitements are hushed. Both body and soul are sensibly calmed and refreshed as we gaze. Do you know the joy and inspiration of an hour spent viewing the wonders of a cloudless, starlit sky? He whose name shall be called Wonderful has surrounded himself with millions of orbiting spheres, gloriously displaying his divine attributes. Is there any wonder that the agnostic philosopher Immanuel Kant declared, "Two things inspire wonder and increasing reverence the more often they are considered: the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." Those stars that twinkle in the sky have a message for you today. It's a silent message. There are no sounds to be heard, not even a whisper or a rustle. Without a sound, we hear a message that cannot be mistaken. Man, walking erect, was made to scan the skies. Looking at the stars is a good place to begin the study of God's creation. Many astronomers have felt a strong compulsion to believe in God. Many atheists have had their belief shaken by looking at the stars. Albert Einstein said that without a sense of wonder, we might as well be dead. Astronomy didn't begin when someone tried to see a star or galaxy through a telescope. It began when man first looked up into the sky, and like the poet said, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Someone has observed that the larger the island of knowledge, the longer the coastline of mystery. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 26, "Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth." What is that silent cosmic message that we receive when we look up? Norris Russell, director of Princeton Observatory, once mused, In these troublous days, when so much seems to be shaken, happy is the man whose faith is fixed on the everlasting God, revealed in His works no less than in His written word. God has two books. One of them is the Holy Bible. The other is the book of nature. This second book is a powerful one. It has many pages, and today we will take a brief look at one of the pages, the starry heavens. I like to imagine David, the shepherd boy, spending a lot of time in the open air watching his father's flocks. Could it be that as his mother packed his lunch, she would slip in portions of scriptures for him to read? There was no Bible as we know it today, but there might have been handwritten portions of the books of Moses, the story of creation. David seemed familiar with the scriptures that existed in his time, but he also studied God's other book, the book of nature. Out there in the fields, in the open air, he could compare the two books, magnifying the excellence of the author revealed in both of them. He could see the same divine hand in both. He could see that the scriptural story of creation could never contradict the evidence that he saw all around him. As he slept under the stars at night, he could look up into the cosmos, and what he saw was in perfect harmony with what was written in the books of Moses. Of the two books, he could say, "My Father wrote them both." He said in Psalms 19:1, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth His handiwork." Here we see the continuance of the testimony of the silent witnesses, the starry host of heaven. Every moment of every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, century after century, millennium after millennium, God's existence, His wisdom, and His goodness are being sounded abroad by the heavenly heralds which shine upon us from above. If you want to know more about divine sublimity, just spend time gazing into the starry vault. If you want to see divine wisdom, just study the delicate balance of the planets in their orbits. If you would like to know more about divine fidelity, just mark the regularity of the planetary motions. If you would like to attain some conceptions of divine power, greatness, and majesty, just try to estimate the forces of attraction, the magnitude of the stars, and their brightness. The Bible was written at a time when people believed this world was stationary and upheld by a giant atlas, a sacred turtle, or an elephant. They were sure that the world was immovable. As late as the time of Columbus, they still argued about this. It frightened them when they first realized that our world is actually hanging out in space, upheld by no visible support, turning on its axis and rushing through space at the rate of 18.5 miles a second. When Sir Isaac Newton was a boy, he used to awaken from his dreams with a frightened outcry. When his parents would rush to his bedside to console him, he explained that he had just dreamed that our world had crashed into something. How much does our Earth weigh? Well, the figure in tons would be a 6 with 21 zeros after it. Someone has calculated that it would need 300 million cables 1 inch thick to hold it up. Way back in Bible times, one of the oldest books of the Bible, written some 3,000 years ago, Job wrote under inspiration, "He that stretcheth out the north over the empty space, and hangeth the earth upon nothing." That's in Job chapter 26, verse 7. For many centuries, people argued that the earth was flat. Columbus had a difficult time convincing Ferdinand and Isabella that he could go east by sailing west. 200 years later, Galileo was called before the authorities of his day and compelled to recant his teaching that the world was round and upheld by no visible support. To save his body from the flames, he had to deny the scientific truths that were so evident to him. As he rose from signing his recantation, he was heard whispering to a friend, "But the earth is round, and it does turn just the same." 2,000 years before Galileo's time, a round world is mentioned in the Bible. It is in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. "It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth." Long before men of science believed it, readers of the Scriptures were assured that the earth is round. The Bible also talks about the movement of the sun. See, people used to scoff about this. Anyone knows that it is not the sun that moves, it is the world rotating on its axis. Is the Bible wrong when it talks about the traveling of the sun? In 1783, William Herschel discovered the movement of the sun. Today we know the sun travels at the rate of 12.2 miles per second, or 43,920,000 miles per hour. And so the psalmist was right when he said in Psalm 19 and verses 4, "In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His goings forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof." The sun is a giant sphere on fire with a surface temperature of more than 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, radiating energy into the space at a steady rate of 4 sextillion horsepower. Every acre of land receives 5,000 horsepower. If you had to pay only 3 cents a kilowatt hour, you would have to pay $100 an hour for each acre of land you have. But why doesn't the sun use up its energy? We all know the laws of conservation of energy assert that energy cannot emerge from nothing. Yet in all the years the sun has lost none of its energy. It shines on century after century with undiminished splendor. We can only come to one conclusion, and that is this, that it receives its energy from some outside source. One morning in Oregon, after days of constant depressing drizzle and dismal semi-darkness, the clouds miraculously separated. Ian McLaren wrote, "Climb the mast until you are above the fog which lies on the surface of the water, and you will see the sun shining on the spiritual world." Back in Bible times, people thought they could count the number of stars in the heavens. Hipparchus and Ptolemy built crude instruments, charted the sky, and made star maps. They came to the conclusion that there were 5,119 stars. Jeremiah, long before this, had said that the stars could not be counted. Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 22. "As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David my servant, and the Levites that minister unto me." Ancient stargazers might have laughed the prophet to scorn. We have no record of Jeremiah ever having made any star maps or any other attempts to number the stars of the sky. But he was personally acquainted with the creator of the stars, and that is why, with calm boldness, he could insist that the stars are innumerable. The argument was not settled in his day. He didn't live to see the scientific world confirm his statement. Centuries passed with the question unsettled. Then, in 1610, Galileo developed a crude instrument through which thousands of stars never before seen in Jeremiah's time suddenly became visible. If we should select an apparently barren region of the sky, the star field of Auriga, only one star is visible to the human eye. Looking through Galileo's telescope, which is capable of bringing out the 12th magnitude stars, we can count more than 60. Through Herschel's telescope, with enough power to show the stars of the 15th magnitude, we could see 100 stars in that area. Looking through the 36-inch telescope on Mount Hamilton, which brings out the 17th magnitude stars, we can count several hundred. But if we visit Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and look through the largest refractor telescope in the world, the great 40-inch Yerkes, we can see the 18th magnitude, and the number of stars is doubled. On Mount Wilson, you can look at this same star field through the famous 100-inch telescope. Looking at the star field of Auriga, we can now see thousands of stars. If next we go to Mount Palomar to look through the giant 200-inch telescope, we would find a 500-ton instrument in a 12-story high observatory, a telescope 40,000 times more powerful than the human eye. Through this telescope, we see a sky aglow with innumerable stars, all in the same spot where the people of Jeremiah's time could only see one faint star. In the constellation of Orion, the naked eye can see some 300 stars. But from the photographs made by Palomar's giant telescope, we can actually count 600,000. Jeremiah was right. You can't count the stars. Scientists tell us that in the Milky Way alone, there are 40 billion stars. But beyond the Milky Way, there are hundreds of millions of other Milky Way systems. We know of at least 500 million of these systems that are too far away to be resolved by our telescopes. The Bible speaks of many astronomical facts known today, but unknown at the time that the Bible was written. This lifts the Bible far above ordinary books. Consider one of these examples in Job chapter 38, verses 31 and 32. Canst thou bind the sweet influence of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season? Or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? The significance of these astronomical statements made 3,000 years ago is tremendous in the light of recent discoveries. Let's look at runaway Arcturus. Here is a giant sun rushing through our densely populated Milky Way at a speed of about 257 miles a second, or almost 1 million miles an hour. Our sun travels at only 12.5 miles a second. A projectile from a great 16-inch gun travels 25 miles a minute, but Arcturus travels 15,420 miles a minute. Arcturus possesses thousands of times the mass of our sun. Now think of the tremendous momentum this motion implies. Charles Burkhalter of the Cabot Observatory has spent much time studying Arcturus. One day, someone called his attention to the text in the book of Job. Mr. Burkhalter said, "The study of the book of Job and its comparison with the latest scientific discoveries has brought me to the matured conviction that the Bible is an inspired book and was written by the one who made the stars." Look at another amazing astronomical reference contained in the same text. Canst thou bind the sweet influence of Pleiades? Photographs reveal that 250 blazing suns in this group are all traveling together in a formation like a flock of birds. Isabel Lewis of the United States Naval Observatory refers to them as journeying onward together through the immensity of space. It is claimed that there are over 25,000 individual measures of the Pleiades stars now available at the cost of millions of dollars, and all of these studies led to one important discovery, and that is this, that these stars are moving in a southeasterly direction, bound together by a close kinship. But without the help of scientists and without the millions of dollars for research, even without the modern equipment, Job announced to the world that the stars in the Pleiades are all bound together. See, God bound them together. He said, "Canst thou loose the bands of Orion?" How could Job have known that every star in Orion is traveling its own course, independent of all the others? The beautiful stars that form one of the bands of Orion are like 3 ships out in the high seas that happen to be in line at the present moment, but in the future will be separated by thousands of miles of ocean. All the stars that at the present time constitute the constellation of Orion are bound for different ports and are all journeying to different corners of the universe so that the bands are being dissolved. No wonder William Herschel, the great astronomer, said, "All human discoveries seem to be made only for the purpose of confirming more strongly the truths that come from on high and are contained in the Bible." In the monthly Evening Sky Map for April 1944 was a poem written by one of the soldiers on a beachhead in Italy the previous September. He wrote these words the day before he was killed: "Lord God, I have never spoken to you, but now I want to say, how do you do? You see, God, they told me you didn't exist, and like a fool, I believed all this. Last night from a shell hole I saw your sky. I figured right then they had told me a lie. Had I taken time to see things you made, I'd have known they weren't calling a spade a spade. I wonder, God, if you'll take my hand. Somehow I feel that you'll understand. Funny, I had to come to this hellish place before I had time to see your face. Well, I guess there isn't much more to say, but I'm sure glad, God, I met you today. I guess 0 hour will soon be here, but I'm not afraid, since I know you're near. The signal, well, God, I'll have to go. I like you lots, I want you to know. Look now, this will be a horrible fight. Who knows? I may come to your house tonight. Though I wasn't friendly to you before, I wonder, God, if you'd wait at the door. Look, I'm crying, me shedding tears. I wish I'd known you these many years. Well, I'll have to go now, God. Goodbye. Strange now, since I met you, I'm not afraid to die. That lad looked up into the starry heavens from his foxhole, and he saw in that clear Mediterranean sky the works of the Almighty. He read on that ponderous page that the heavens declare the glory of God, and there he became acquainted with his God in time to know him as a friend and Savior. Do you know him?
Forever he will be. reconcile man to God. Forever He will be the Lamb upon the throne. I gladly bow my knee and worship Him alone. Forever you will be the Lamb upon the throne. I gladly bow my knee and worship you alone. Lord, I worship you alone. Lord, I worship you alone.
I hope you enjoyed our program today, and I look forward to being with you again next week. Until then, remember, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God.